So I'll keep it brief, but first of all, appreciate everybody coming out and supporting Penn State football. We truly appreciate it. We're a few days in now, so we got a better feel kind of where we're at. I think we have had a really good off season, from winter workouts to spring ball to summer training. I think our strength staff have done a phenomenal job. Our guys have done a phenomenal job. We are bigger, stronger, and faster than we've been. I think we got a little bit more of a mature team, and that plays a role in it at some positions. But it's been good. I thought our practice 1 was really good. I thought our practice 3 was excellent, which happened yesterday, which was extremely competitive. First day in shoulder pads, and that was good. So a ton to build on, and obviously having all 3 coordinators back in their positions, there's a ton of value in that. So there's really no new teaching going on, except for the young players. So far, so good. Been very competitive. We are looking forward to the open practice that we're having, which is something that is new. It's something that we've really wanted to do for a while. I've brought it up to the coordinators, and we haven't always all been on the same page that everybody wants to do it. I think some of you guys know me and Manny went and visited the Patriots, this past off season. And we think it's going to be a good thing. One of the reasons I'm excited about it is we like to play in Beaver Stadium. We think being in Beaver Stadium is good for our guys, so they're not experiencing it for the first time. But I also think there's an aspect of playing in front of the fans and playing in front of the media that also prepares our guys. One of the things I would ask from you guys as a media team that covers Penn State football, Chris and Greg are going to kind of put out the rules of that. We've gone to basically the Steelers and the Eagles, and we're going to pretty much cover a very similar format, the way they do their open practices. And to me, if you guys can follow that, that would be great, because then we'll be more likely to do it next year. If some people can't follow, then that will be problematic for all of us, and I don't think good for all of us. So I think this can be a win-win for everybody. So, but we're excited about it. We got a good team. We got an exciting season coming forward. We got some interesting matchups. Obviously, most importantly, we open up here at night against West Virginia, 7:30. So should be tremendous opening game of the season. So appreciate everybody being here, and look forward to spending the season with you guys, and I open it up to questions.
All right, please raise your hand. We'll bring a mic to you. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, James, how you doing?
Hey, Mark.
You're in a very volatile profession, but now you're here going into your 10th year, second most tenured coach in an 18-team conference. Can you wrap your head kind of around that? And does it seem like it's gone quickly, or given all the things that have changed, has it been kind of a long journey here?
Yeah, I think your description of the profession is accurate, and I think that's for a lot of different reasons, as we all know. This is kind of aligns more with kind of my DNA and kind of who I am as a person. Very loyal person. But I also think it aligns with kind of what the university is used to as well. So I think those things, make a ton of sense. It is also very unusual as well for there to be, I think, 3 different athletic directors during that time and 3 different presidents. And I want to make sure I'm perfectly clear on this. I am very, very appreciative and have a ton of respect for all 3 presidents and all 3 athletic directors who all came to Penn State at different times with different challenges. And I'm very, very appreciative of all of them. But yeah, it's somewhat unusual in today's college football, which also in some ways is sad, right? I think stability is good for a lot of things and for a lot of people and a lot of organizations. But I don't take it for granted one day. This is a special place and a special community with history and tradition and passion. So it's special. And I think you guys know, I think we have 19 alumni working in the Lash football building, 10 former Lettermen. So we take a lot of pride in that as well. There's been some challenging days, but many more good days. And I wake up every single day feeling blessed and appreciative.
Hi, James. You've made it clear what you think of this team, that how well you think you can be. Why is that? And do you feel like the window is as open as it's been for you guys to get to the playoff?
Yeah, I don't know if I've necessarily said all the things that you just said, and sometimes I think you guys do that to try to trick me to just go along with what you say. What I have been very clear on, in my opinion, is I do think this is as much depth as we have had. We got a three deep at pretty much every position, and I'd probably describe it a little bit more in more detail as probably more of a 2.5 deep. So what I mean by that is if you're talking about the defensive end position, really talking about 5 guys that we think we can win with. So 2 deep at each side, and then a spare. A 5th guy that could swing it. But at some positions, I do think we have a true 3 deep. I just don't remember us having that as consistently across the board. And that really even goes to the specialists. I think we got more competition at the specialist positions that we've had in the past. So I think the stability on the staff, the more depth, those things are good. And I think they typically lead to giving yourself a chance to be successful. So are we excited about it? Yes. Do we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of questions to answer? Yes. Do I think we are arguably in the best conference in college football and specifically the best division? I think we're part of that argument. I think it's hard to say that we're not. And again, I've been a head coach in both conferences that are a part of that discussion, in my opinion. So I think I got a pretty good lens on all of this. So that's how I would describe it.
Coach, I love some early camp reaction. What's the one story you have wanted to go home and tell the family from this first week? What's the one thing that's really jumped off the page?
I guess after 10 years, there's not as many new and exciting things to talk about. But but I try to usually get home at a reasonable hour and sit down and talk with my wife. A lot of times the girls are in bed. One of the things that was cool yesterday, Frank Leonard, we were talking about this on our ride home last night. How many wives and kids and families were at practice. And I think that's another thing that we take a lot of pride in here at Penn State is it is a family atmosphere. In a lot of places, they say it is, but it's really not. People aren't comfortable coming into the office and being around. My wife was at practice yesterday with the second dog that we've gotten. I didn't want the first one. I actually like the first one now, but I'm not gonna like the second one no matter what. But it was cool having all the wives at practice, and I think that's important for our players. I think that's important for our culture. So coming home and just kind of filling my wife in kind of on the blanks and things that are going on in the program, but I feel really good about it. I don't really have anything that's kind of exciting that I'm going home. Kind of can't wait to tell my wife about that happened today because we're very routine oriented. We don't tweak and we don't change a whole lot of things unless they need to. We found a better way of doing it based on off-season studies of best practice. So we're very routine oriented. This media day and this press conference pushed our staff meeting from 7 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. So the coaches love you guys for that. But we're pretty regimented about how we do things. So not a whole lot of that. What's up, Ricardo? How you doing, buddy? Ricardo played for me at the University of Maryland, was a great player, and we've stayed in touch and is doing great things. So it's really cool to see Ricardo here. Welcome to Happy Valley, brother.
James, a few days ago, the news that Oregon and Washington will be joining the Big Ten. What were your initial reactions to that? What are your thoughts of that in the future?
Yeah, I had some conversations. It's really cool that our president, Dr. Ben DePuti, picks up the phone and calls me and includes me in those conversations and discussions, and Pat Kraft as well. I'm very appreciative of that and don't take that for granted. I will say that, my focus, and obviously this press conference is about specifically our football team and getting ready for West Virginia and getting ready for the Big Ten Conference. I do think it obviously, with what you see that's going on in college football right now, it's not shocking, that these things are kind of happening. It's somewhat sad in some ways, not that these people are being added to our conference, because I think obviously there's a lot of strategy that goes into that. But, I do think there's some challenges that come along with it, and it's just very different for most of the people in this room. It's very different than the college football that we all grew up with, and not really college football, college athletics, where, at least for most of the year it was pretty regional. I do think it's a huge win for USC and UCLA. From a travel perspective, I think it's a huge win for them.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Are you saying you're a cat person, first off? Not a dog person?
No.
Okay. No animals.
Yeah, it's back to the routine thing.
Okay.
Like, I think me and my wife kind of had the two daughters finally figured out.
Right.
And then you're adding another thing to the equation.
Just want to make sure on that.
Yes,
Look, going back to
No
what Mark,
cats.
got it. Going back to Mark touched on as far as year 10 goes, and just, I know conference realignment's one of the changes, but just the game itself, you've seen so many unprecedented changes in the game since you've been here. I mean, transfer portal, NIL, conference realignment, expanded playoff format, overtime rules. What were the easy ones to predict that you saw, maybe the ones that you're surprised by, and ultimately, how has it affected your day-to-day operations or the way that you do your job from when you started to now?
Yeah, it's been dramatic. And, I don't know if COVID has played a part in it as well. But it seems like since COVID, it's sped everything up. But the last 5 years, I think you guys have heard me say this before, there's probably been more changes in the last 5 years than the previous 50. And I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close. I think the game and the rules were the same for probably at least 50 years. And now in the last 5, there's been changes and dramatic changes. I would make the argument, I think we could sit here and have a pretty interesting debate that some of the changes were needed. I would also say, in defending the NCAA, that nobody seems to be doing anymore. I think people see, once they try to get involved in it, that a lot of these decisions and a lot of these changes and a lot of these rules are much more sophisticated than people think, and much more challenging than people think, because they cross over into a lot of different worlds. But I guess this would probably be the best way to describe it from my lens and my perspective, is the transfer portal. I think it's like the pendulum, right? I think the pendulum has overcorrected, but I would say there was a problem. Should head coaches have been able to have the power to deny kids from transferring from 10 to 10 different schools? Yeah, they shouldn't have been able to do that. That was not right. That was unfair. And to be honest with you, there was really only a handful of people that abused it. And that's probably the same way in any industry, right? There's a few people, maybe 5%, that abuse the rules, Well, now that happens, and now a rule has to be put in place to correct for that. And I think that's really what happened. Instead of maybe allowing coaches, I think it would have been much better to have the conferences and the commissioners come up with a standard rule, whatever it may be, 5 schools, or you can't transfer within your conference or whatever. But there was people saying anybody on our schedule 5 years out, like it just was too much. I also don't think that just complete open transferring is good. And it's funny because I think when a lot of people say things like this, it comes off as being anti-student athlete. And that's completely the opposite when it comes to me. But again, I still believe in the student athlete model, and I still believe that the number one thing we should be doing is educating. And when I talk about that, what I mean by that is when you look at graduation rates, the data is very strong that every time you every time you transfer, the likelihood of graduating goes down because you lose credits. So I think that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. It's a much more sophisticated issue. Do I think the players should have options and choices? Yes. Do I think the coaches should have been able to restrict student athletes from transferring, anywhere that the coach didn't want them to transfer to? No. But I think we could have gotten to more of a middle ground rather than from one extreme to where we are now. And then if you take education out of it, just the ability for college athletics and specifically football to teach people how to overcome adversity. And then you go to the other end of the spectrum, you come up with rules and guardrails. Well, then the lawyers know what the rules and the guardrails are, so then they use them to create an exception for every kid. So, in my defense of the NCAA and the model to a degree, the problems and the challenges are more sophisticated than I think people realize. And I think one of the best things that we can do is get all the commissioners in the same room at the same time, and try to do what's best for college athletics as a whole, because they're the most powerful people in college athletics, in my opinion.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
Can you talk about what you've seen from the quarterbacks through the first few practices, and do you have a timetable for naming a projected starter?
Yeah, they've been throwing it, handing it off. Yeah, no, I was just messing with you. Drew and Bo, obviously, in year 2, they look like guys that are year 2 in the same system mentally. They look like guys year 2 physically. They've both gotten stronger. They've both gotten leaner. They've both gotten faster. They've gotten more confident with their reads, their accuracy, their decision making, their those types of things. So they've been impressive. They really have. I think you just triggered a thought to a question earlier about a surprise. I'd say Smolik has been kind of the surprise of camp so far, specifically in the quarterback room. He's one of those guys that, although he is still learning the nuances of the position and the nuances of the offense in terms of in the meeting room, when asked questions, he's not where Drew and Bo are in terms of being able to answer questions in a meeting room, but he's just got a natural feel for the position on the field. Some guys, it's almost like a point guard. You just got a feel for depth and spacing on the field and how to find open receivers. He throws a really nice ball, so he's doing well. He's been. If we can continue to build on this, I think we'll feel good, about where he's at. But Bo and Drew I think you guys will get a chance to see him, obviously, here at practices over the next couple weeks. Then the open practice will get you a bigger, something that you guys have asked for, which is a little bit more time, getting a chance to see the team and evaluate the roster. They look like guys that are year two more experienced guys that are confident in how to execute and run the offense. And I think both of them have the team's respect. In terms of decisions, we're not announcing or making any decisions at this point really at any position. It's a competition, and we want to create competition at every position as long as possible, because I think it brings the best out in everyone. And as you guys know, that's really kind of how we've operated here for 10 years.
Hey, James, right in the middle here. Third row. There you go.
Hey, John. Sorry.
You good. You mentioned having a 2.5 or 3 deep at every position. Is wide receiver one of those positions? And where's Dante Sivas at now that he's had a chance to practice with you guys?
Yeah, I think wide receiver is a position where I wouldn't necessarily say we have a 2 deep or 3 deep that's defined yet, but I think we have a good number of guys that legitimately are competing for that third spot. But really, when you talk about the two deep, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and I think there's probably 8 guys that are legitimately in that competition, and it kind of goes day to day. The big thing that we're looking for, at each position, and then really across, our team and as our team as a whole, is consistency. That's one of the things we talked about earlier today at the end of our walkthrough. Is we got to consistently have championship level practices. And that's really the same thing at the wide receiver position. There's probably 8 to 9 guys that are showing flashes that they could be the starter for us. But it comes down to consistency at every position. And I'd say it may be a little magnified at that spot. And specifically to your question about Dante, he's done some really good things. He's gotten bigger. He's gotten stronger. The guys like him. The guys got a ton of respect for him. He's shown flashes. I do think there's an adjustment period that he's going through because it's one thing to do it 2 or 3 times a season when you're watching him play an opponent like Georgia. It's another thing to do it week in and week out in the Big Ten, and I think it's another thing to do it every day at practice. And I think he's really embraced that, and I think he recognizes it's going to bring the best out in him as well.
James, all the way back to your right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Your safety competition, you said in Indianapolis that was one of the question marks you had. How do you feel about those guys right now? Is there anybody that's popped out at safety to you?
So that's a position that we probably have right now, a 2 deep. That I think really the 2 deep, you could make the argument is better than the 2 deep we had last year. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that the starters are going to be better because, as we all know, Jair Brown was a hell of a player and a ton of production, but I don't necessarily expect one person to replace his production. I think he had 8 interceptions last year and 16 interceptions over the last 2, I think, if that may be accurate. And what you hope is among that group that we can get that type of production as a group. But I think an important piece is back to what I was saying is I do think we got a 2 deep we feel good about. We got to have at least a 5th guy that we feel good about. In ideal world, we have a 3 deep. We're not there yet. That's one of the positions I think we got a 2 deep. But we need at least to be able to figure out who is that 5th player going to be that, as you guys know, will most likely be in the 2 deep at some point, this season.
Hey, James, how's it going? Right
Hey,
in front
Ben.
of Audrey. Obviously, it's not uncommon for guys to work
Ben,
with.
where are you living now?
I'm still in Minnesota, so.
So you just come in for certain
Yeah, I've been on 40 airplanes since last September, so I love you.
Love you too, man.
Just kidding. Some message board's very unhappy right now. It's not uncommon, obviously, for guys to work with.
Just so everybody out there, Ben doesn't love me, and I don't love Ben. Don't have to go down that rabbit hole.
Oh boy. I know it's not uncommon for guys to work with position-specific coaches away from campus.
I like you a lot, though.
You're fine.
I get fined? Okay.
No, I like you
Let's
too.
get to your question.
Guys work away from campus with position-specific coaches. Obviously, that's not uncommon. When it comes to Drew and his relationship with Brad, obviously you've got another guy you can't talk about that also works with him. How do you get on the same page, especially at a position like quarterback, where it kind of matters more that everybody's giving him the same message, and how does that process sort of work to make sure that you're on that same page?
I think it really helps at every position if there's a relationship there, right? I think that's the only way it really works, is there must be a relationship there, because if your players are going home to work with a trainer that has very strong beliefs on how things should be done and how they operate, and he's really spending time teaching things in a very different way than we are, then it's really in nobody's best interest. So for there to be a relationship on the front end, maybe while they were in high school and things like that, and even maybe some communication going on, that trainer is saying, listen, I want this young man to be successful, so I want to make sure that I understand what he's being taught on campus, and then try to bridge the gap as much as possible. That's really important. And I would say, really, I'm a believer in the trainers, really at every position. But I would say that if you're a high school student athlete or a college student athlete and you're working with a trainer that's not trying to work in cooperation, and again, I don't want people to misinterpret. It's not like these guys are an extension of my coaching staff. I'm just saying that they understand what we're teaching and how we're teaching it, so that everybody is putting this student athlete, this young man, in the best position to be successful. That's important. And if someone's not trying to do that, then it puts the student athlete, in a really tough spot between two worlds being pulled in two different directions. So I think it's like anything else. I don't care what business you're in, what industry you're in, how you go about your business. It always starts and ends with relationships.
Time for two more. We got Tyler and then Wogie.
James back here. You talked about quarterback, cover some ground on safety. Beyond that, what positions have impressed you thus far early on in camp, and who's kind of, I guess, spearheading those efforts at those positions?
Yeah, I think depth on the D-line and depth on the O-line, is impressive. The amount of bodies, the amount of experience that I think are going to impact the team this year and have really good careers here at Penn State. I think that's impressive. I would say the same thing at the tight end position. I'd say the same thing at the running back position. Those positions stand out. I'd say the same thing at corner. So the way you're able to practice, sometimes it's difficult to develop the threes, because maybe your 3-0 line is not the same as your 3D line. So now the quarterback and all the other positions suffer because of that. So I think that's back to the original question about depth. Having a 3 deep across the board allows you to develop your entire roster when you feel like you got legitimate guys to put out there, both physically and mentally. That also impacts your practice, right? A lot of times you think the practice is going really well with the 1s and the 2s, and the 3s go out, and it's just sloppy, so it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. There's less of that now. The 3s are able to go out and operate. I think that's been really valuable. We're doing, you guys will probably see this a little bit. I think you saw it the other day, even for PAT field goal. Having 2 units going at the same time, I'm a big believer in that. Is most of these young men, they learn by doing, not by watching. So being able to get multiple groups out there getting reps and being coached is really valuable.
James, earlier you mentioned, I wanted to make sure I got this straight, about going to New England in the offseason. Was that you and Manny, or just Manny?
Me, Manny, and Frank. Yeah, I think a bunch of you guys covered it. It got out on social media. We didn't put anything out, but somebody there used to be here, put something out, and next you know, a bunch of people covered it. And Coach Belichick was awesome. Frank Leonard worked for the Patriots for, I think, 3 years. Manny has gone up there the last couple of years, so we went up, and Coach Belichick was phenomenal to us. We were there for about 2 days. We were in all the meetings, the individual meetings, the unit meetings, the team meetings. We were out at practice. We were at training table with them. They grind pretty good during OTA, so we were there from early in the morning till late at night. Coach Belichick was phenomenal to us. Me and Manny were kind of caught off guard because he had Manny and myself address the team after practice. I'm like, what the hell does Belichick want us to say to the Patriots? But it was great. We had a phenomenal experience. And what happens a lot of times is, even if you pick up 2 or 3 things, it's worth it. 2 or 3 things that you saw at practice. One of the things we're doing right now that the Patriots did that we're now doing that our players don't like is, you jump off sides, you're out. You lose your rep, and you got to run a lap around the field. The Patriots did that. And we're doing it now. So you pick up 2 or 3 things. I also think it shows the players, we're asking them to improve. I want them to understand that we are trying to improve every single day, and we're lifelong learners, not only in football, but in life. Trying to get better and trying to be the best versions of ourselves every single day for our families, for our wives and children, but also for our players and for Penn State.
All right, thank you very much, Coach. We'll have Stacy Collins right after this.